This is my last poem. Thank you again. This is called Ghost Gear. Low tide, my father high steps the trammel net, stoops half submerged into Naga Bay, and begins the work of disentangling yet another sockeye from the interlaced snares. He stands before me now, the same foot shorter he's been the last 20 years. My sister and I, nothing back then but a notion when my father could hold his breath well over a minute. How or why, I've learned not to ask. The familiar arc of his story cast out like he, the newest member of the crew, flung to the farthest edge of the intertidal. I could hear better then, he always adds. Good thing I always think. Otherwise, he'd not have heard that thin cry of alarm from the beach. Otherwise, he'd not have looked up from his work to see the bellowing chord of the continental shelf rise to obscure summer's first dusk, as if Britomartis herself, goddess of fishermen, has half risen from the sea to encompass that final island of the Aleutians. Dumbstruck, my father watches the wave suck in the tide like a maw. His legs, wranglers rolled to the knee, for the first time exposed, the net an organism in and of itself, a bare root system, salmon left clapping wet sand as far as the eye can see, a wave the width of his vision charging the land. My father claims that in such moments the body lightens. My father claims that there he saw himself bird's eye view, that he watched himself look up at the sky, and the sky had become a mirror. And he sees his body ascend the cumulus as if pulled by threads of light, each thrust of the sky's wide wings lifting him ever closer to a rift in the clouds. But my father does not kneel genuflect to the gods. My father does not consider his sins or ask for forgiveness. Rather, he gives his marrow to those ropes. He weaves himself into those moorings. And the last thing he sees is the wave. And the last thing he hears is something like the clap of 1,000 hands, and the sea took him. Language fails my father here, so he resorts to sound. Wham! Slamming one open palm into the other as if to quash something living, his posture surging in our living room, the tumblings of his cliffhanger body whipped by the imagined sea. How do I describe what seemed like hours beneath the waves? I am a poet retelling a telling. The sea did not care about my father, but the wave came and went, and my father held his ground. The backdraft strong in the waves' wake, Britomartis' final tug for his spirit. And he lashed the flesh of his life from that ocean, and the water receded. Now, my father lights up when he tells how he returned to the beach as slowly as possible. And how, when the men finally saw him emerge from the sea, they cheered his name. My father returned from what they believed surely to be the dead. Ghost gear, they call it. Nets and riggings lost at sea to fish for no man. Blindly trolling seines illuminating the deep with their bioluminescent catch. Ruptured buoys and trammels coasting past coral reefs until they drift down, down, down into the dark. Only once have I asked my father why he chose out there to live. Only once has he told me that as the wave approached, he heard a voice, and that voice asked him, "Are you a father?" And my father said, "Yes." Thank you.